there's still one comment and question by Zifu which was not responded. There's something related to the monarch. I don't know if it's too difficult to respond, or or maybe Dr. Farid wants to comment.
I won't comment to Zifu's question. I'll just would like to comment on this this Indonesian participant just now about Sharia. I think this must have been your first attendance to our conference, right? So we've been talking about this secular state and Sharia for many years, and we had brought Professor Naim over here and given a series of lectures in KL and in Penang as well. So what I would like to say that in a nutshell, I wouldn't elaborate as much as you did, but in a nutshell, we have to differentiate between what is Sharia and what is fiqh, or as you said, fiqh, right? Fiqh. So if we can understand between the difference between the two, then there shouldn't be any problem, right? Because I would like to quote this from Imam Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah in his book I'lam al-Muwaqqi'in. He said, verily, the Sharia is founded upon wisdom and welfare for the servants in this life and in the afterlife. In its entirety, it is justice, mercy, benefit, and wisdom. Every matter which abandons justice for tyranny, mercy for cruelty, benefit for corruption, and wisdom for foolishness is not part of Sharia, even if it was introduced therein by an interpretation. Meaning to say that, like the way they formulated over here in Malaysia, they formulated this hudud laws in Terengganu and in Kelantan. We are saying that it's purely fiqh, right? It has nothing to do with Sharia. Well, it was derived from Sharia, but it was merely their interpretation of what it is. And we have argued, based on so many enactments in their amendments of these hudud laws, that justice would not be established. There's so many reasons, and I wouldn't take this forum to elaborate each one of it. But it's suffice to say that if you read the Professor Hashim Kamali's book on his comments on the Kelantan hudud law, it is more than sufficient to understand the difference between the two. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. First of all, I think before I ask question, just to respond a bit about the professor and the doctor discussion about democracy. I think when we talk about democracy, there's a lot of underlying assumption that we think that, first of all, democracy is neutral, is universal. It has an embedded principle and values put in place before everyone wants to play around the game of democracy. So my question is, how post-Islamism want to project itself as something unique towards these proposed supposedly universal values of democracy? For example, you take example of Oktoberfest. There's because, for example, in Islam or Muslim, the important thing is not only the freedom to believe in religion, but also the freedom to express their religious adherence. For the liberals, there's I don't think it's a new phenomenon, but it's not only important to think liberally, to have an open-minded about things, but to express things liberally. To say that I don't wear tudung and I'm proud. To say that I drink alcohol and I'm proud. To express yourself liberally and provoke the dominant culture of the society. So my question is, how do post-Islamism project itself or have a stance towards these kind of challenges, particularly from the immediate culture of everyday life? Not particularly on state as the challenges, but this imported, not imported, but the globalized culture of I can say a liberal expression, or maybe a hedonist culture of this kind of lifestyle, concert, drinking alcohol and everything. It's not only just a private practice anymore, but there's a kind of a need, a phenomenon for the liberals to express their liberals lifestyle. So how do post-Islamists respond to this? Do they take a stance like the secular, or do they have a unique approach towards this? Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. My question is actually for Dr. Zul, but he's no longer here, so I think I'll address my question to any convinced Muslim Democrat in the room. So I feel that like there's a contradiction in the term Muslim Democrat, because this is my assumption, so correct me if I'm wrong. So if a Muslim, our main reference would be the Quran and Sunnah. But for a Democrat, I assume that the main point of reference would be the Constitution or a consensus of the public, which can be done by referendum or pilihan raya. But what happens when the consensus of the public and the Quran and the Sunnah would conflict, which it happens all the time. So I was going to ask Dr. Zul on specificities, but probably I will just open the question if no one wants to answer, so let it be. But on the next, second question is, I feel like Muslim Democrat or Islamist Democrat jump on the train of democracy, but when they got to the top, they take off their democratic suit. We can see this in Erdogan and Morsi. When he was in power, he tried to do something to the constitution, which probably not a direct authoritarian, but leaning towards a bit of, there's a authoritarian leaning over there. So yeah, to convince Muslim Democrat in the room or Islamist in the room, what do you say to the allegations that you're not really a convinced Democrat, you're just using it as a train to power? And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll start first. I think I'll go to Magat Hanes' question. It's a very how do I say, sticky issue, right? Because to me, post-Islamists believe in freedom to sin. Freedom to sin is not like what this Jakim wrote in Berita Harian recently, basically encouraging people to commit sin. No, it's different. Freedom to sin and encouraging people to commit sin, is as different as heaven and earth. All right. What we're trying to say is that this freedom to sin is that a person has the right to do wrong. You can say it's his choice to sin, and it's between him and God. But in this Oktoberfest, for example, the issue on Oktoberfest, I think I made a statement in front of the lawyers during the Bar Council meeting with Tan Sri Gopal Sriram, the former federal judge, that we have to be more nuanced in looking at this particular aspect, right? Because even though individually is between him and God, between the person and God, but I think collectively is different. To do it collectively and open is a different matter altogether, and I think we can discuss about that in detail later on. Maybe Prof, you can have your input later on. And about this, what do you call, a conflict between democracy and Sharia and the Quran, for example. To me, I believe because democracy is basically ruled by the majority, right? Ruled by the majority of people. And I believe in this hadith that the Prophet says that you cannot find consensus and ijma among the Muslims in something which is unjust. So meaning to say that no, there won't be any ijma, any consensus. So I do not believe that suddenly, because of democracy, Muslims would vote for drinking wine is permissible, for example. It's impossible, right? It's impossible. It's just hypothetical, but it's impossible for us to drive that. Yep.
Well, yeah, that works if we have a 100% Muslim country or convinced Muslim country, but we don't have that reality now. And even when we are majority Muslim, we are not all practicing Muslims.
Yeah,
so it works in abstract, but it doesn't
I know. It doesn't matter. To me, as a Democrat and as a Muslim Democrat, I believe that if it is the wish of the people to have, because we are just a simple majority in a country, for example, right? And if the wish of the majority of the people of a country to say that drinking wine is should be permitted, for example, then it's up to the people. It's the choice of the people. There's no problem with that, because that's the way that we have to govern the country. It's based on democracy, and I don't have any qualms in that. And I think I've written in my first article on arguing for a secular state, right? This particular idea. And on your second question about living democracy when you are in power, I think we have seen that. We have seen that in Turkey. We have seen that even when Morsi came to power, and so on and so forth. And I think that's something that we need to learn. So we need to learn from Ennahda, for example, right? So I think probably the most vibrant democracy, a true Muslim democrat, is still a Ghanouchi. Right, it's neither Erdogan nor Morsi. Sadly to say that, you know, like the revolution that has been started from Arab Spring in Egypt, you know, it was being hijacked, right? So in whatever that the most important thing that I want to say is that we have to be truthful to our words, right? We have to be truthful to our words as Muslim Democrat, that we are going to implement democracy, and that's the most important thing. Yeah.
Probably just a quick. No, I'm thinking. Yeah, just a quick comment. Well, for the liberal expressions, yeah, I think we can make a distinction between, I mean, democracy and, well, even when you say liberalism, it may mean different things. It does not necessarily mean like hedonism, as you said. So probably it's more a matter of style, I would say. I don't see any... well, in Indonesia we have Jaringan Islam Liberal, which is almost gone now. But yeah, it's controversial. And also it's not always clear, actually, what do you mean by being a liberal? So, yeah, I don't know what exactly is your concern. I mean, in your question, but yeah, I think it does not always go together. I mean, the liberalness and democracy. So, yeah, the other. Yeah, the question about the Muslim Democrats, I'd like to comment on that also. Well, I think, again, referring to one scholar who has been quoted several times in this room, An-Naim, when he speaks, you use the term Muslim Democrats. Muslims references Quran, Democrats to Constitution. Well, I think in An-Naim's understanding, I mentioned that earlier, it's more he uses the three criteria: constitutionalism, not constitution, not a particular constitution, but constitutionalism, equal citizenship, and human rights. And the issue is not about you will be loyal to which one, Quran or the others. But both actually are not fixed. You read the Quran, I mean, the Quran doesn't tell you exactly, like in the question about the state, what form of a state you should have. You should think about it yourself. And when you think, you look at the situation, the context. And for An-Naim, at this moment, the democratic idea based on constitutionalism, citizenship, and human rights, that's the best way to translate Islam. So, of course, you have to argue for that. To argue that that you are being loyal to your understanding of the Quran, which may be different from others' understanding. That this framework of constitutionalism, citizenship, and human rights give you the best interpretations of Islam as you understand it, which can be criticized by others, but yeah, that's how it is. So, so I don't think there's a contradiction, because you think of one within the framework of the other. And I don't think the framework limits you, because in one way or another you have to use a certain framework. And this framework, you have to argue for using this framework of constitutionalism, citizenship, and human rights. And for me, myself, I mean, actually also I would recommend reading An-Naim if you have not read it. I think he has a convincing argument, returning to his first statement that he wanted to be a good Muslim. So, and then he saw what are the ways of being a good Muslim today. Being a Democrat, being loyal to Constitution, human rights, that's for him the best way of being a Muslim today. So, yeah, thank you.
I think I really don't have much to add. Those points just made I strongly agree with. I will just say one thing in a slightly different way. As we bring our 3-day meeting to a conclusion, I would hope that one of the lessons, however much we might disagree or have different views on certain specific items, I would hope that one of the conclusions, or as we say in the States, one of the takeaways that we take away from this conference is that democracy is not just majority rule. If you want to speak casually about majority rule, most human societies before the rise of the state were democracies in that sense of having majority rules. They weren't state-based societies with strong hierarchies. They were relatively more egalitarian than the organized states that emerged 6,000 years ago. But they weren't democratic in the modern sense of democracy, because democracy is not majority rule if it's just majority rule. The lesson that I take away, and that I've heard, I think everyone of the speakers affirm, is that democracy is both, it's a very complex and nuanced instrument for, and it varies in its precise mechanisms for assessing majority views. And secondly, and in many ways more importantly, it has to do with the definition of certain qualities of human dignity that are deemed inviolable, and which are sometimes called citizen rights, sometimes called civic rights, sometimes called human rights. But whatever the vocabulary, the takeaway that I would have hoped that we would all have and share in day 3 of the conference is that democracy as majority rule is not going to be realized without that second quality of a civic citizen culture. And that's in fact what we've been talking about when the ways to achieve that is what we've been talking about when we've been talking about civil Islam. That component of the recognition of human dignity in all of its complexity, it's a slogan, but in reality it has to be realized through the recognition of certain inviolable characteristics. Liberal theorists, and I don't particularly care for this vocabulary, say certain possessions that people have, but they mean qualities of human dignity and rights. However we define it, and of course within Islamic tradition, those characteristics, the fitrah of human dignity recurs again and again and again. So it's the desire to institutionalize defenses for certain inviolable human dignities that is, I think, the second and most important quality of what is required to make democracy work. And I think that recognition is what has made this 3-day conference, for which I am very grateful and where I've learned a lot. It's what's made this conference so valuable, sending that message that democracy requires something much more, and something that is much more recognizable across traditions. It's not just liberal. I've said repeatedly, democracy it has nothing to do with the Greeks, whatever the etymology of the word. It's a modern institution in its contemporary form. It's variable across cultures. The precise way in which the procedures for majority recognition are realized vary, but most importantly, so do the precise characteristics and protections given to human dignity. And those, so that one may aspire for a universal pattern of human rights, in some ways I do, But I also recognize, and I think we have to recognize, that because that civic culture emerges from a real society with its own traditions, its own beliefs, there will be some variation, but a variation that hopefully remains open and in dialogue with other democratic and other deep ethical traditions. Thank you.
I just thank you to respond to the two questions from my understanding, and speaking as a professor teaching at the university, one of the things that I always tell the students is that things such as a historical document like the Quran or whatever the Constitution of the United States, whatever you say about it is always an interpretation. Okay, and your interpretation of things, because you use such terms like, what happens if this thing contradicts Islamic practice from the Quran and the Sunnah? Now, be careful here. Knowledge grows. Okay, and knowledge grows as you read more, as you think more, and it is not static. It's never static. It is dynamic in nature. Okay, so that's why when giving a talk about PhD, I say PhD is not the search for the truth. It's only an exercise of making a statement by building a framework that fits the data that you put in. That's about what it is. And so if you say that you discovered the truth, then when you go into a seminar room, you will never accept anybody else's point of view. That's the problem with having the truth. Okay? So that is number one. With regards to the idea of democracy, people seem to think, like the first question, that democracy is another religion. It's not. It's just a shell. It's a system. Okay, and that's why when somebody wanted to burn the Quran in the United States, Obama couldn't send the police to stop him, but he appealed to his better senses. Look, if you do this, some American somewhere will be threatened by other people. You know, she had to appeal to him. So that is the strength of the idea of so it's a system of living together. And Islam, as you understand it, came from a certain parochial system of 100% Muslim or something like that. But now you come into a place where you have to be in a different mode. Okay? Masuk kandang kambing mengambil, masuk kandang kerbau menguak. So you have a different situation of multicultural, multiracial, and there is this system called democracy, whatever it is. It's a system, it's not a religion. Okay? You're not going to go hell or heaven by it. And so I agree with Rumza. I go to a pub, my friends, they are drinking beer, but I'm not. So it's up to you to drink or not.
Okay, I would like to finally thank, I would like to thank, but again, Dr. Farouk, Prof. Hefner, Dr. Zainal Bagir, Dr. Zul's already left, and also our other guests, and also our participants for the full conference. We have come to an end to the session, and I would like to call for a round of applause to all our speakers and all our participants for this almost 3 days conference. I'm sure we will be meeting you all again. There will be like other new conferences, seminars, forums, workshops perhaps in the coming future, and we will make sure that the discussion will continue, and of course the journey for reform, the journey for progress is not something easy, and creating a civil Islam is not just about talks, not just about thinking, also involves work, it also involves collaboration, and it also involves some kind of commitment as well. So from the part of Islamic Renaissance Front, I think over the past few years, our commitment towards reaching a civil Islam has been continuous, and I'm sure Dr. Farouk has no intention to backtrack on that part. So keep on joining our programs, take part in our activities, and also give new suggestions and initiate new activities for collaboration in the future.
Just listen to Dr. Farouk on the Nehla he's facing, so at least we make dua for him. It's Monday, I think the Monday is tomorrow, right? If you could say a little bit.
I'll give the opportunity for Dr. Farouk to just give a wrap up or closing.
Well, I'll be seeing them at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. I don't think I'll bring a lawyer with me because I think it will intimidate them in a way. So let's see how it goes. I think everything is inside here, so I'll just go as it is. Inshallah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You want to make a last comment about No, I think you have to check out now. It's 12 p.m. And those who are registered participants of the conference, you can have lunch with us. Those who just walk in, I have to apologize that we can't provide you lunch. And we hope to see you in the future. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Farouk, and thank you everyone again.